Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of the Satisfied Watch Collector podcast. And I'm really excited to be with you today. This came as an idea around wanting to expand on some of the topics that I've been covering in some of my YouTube videos. If you've not seen my YouTube channel, definitely take a look there because there are a lot of watch basics topics, collecting topics. I have watch reviews, and I wanted to find a way to do something a little bit longer form for the people that are interested in that and diving into more depth and more detail. So that's what this is. It'll be really an evolution as we go here, based on feedback, based on what you all want to hear and see. So just keep that in mind as we get started. And if this is your first time experiencing my channel or my content, I'm a big proponent of you getting out of watches whatever it is that you want to get out of watches, because I'm all about you knowing and loving what you have so that you can be a satisfied watch collector. And that really comes down to, I don't want it just to be about chasing the hype. I don't want it to be just about going after what people are talking about and what you think you should like. I want to help you build your own collecting philosophy, if you will, and your own approach so that you can go after the pieces that are going to be meaningful and right for you. And that's what I hope to help you define and refine as we go through some of these episodes. So, my most recent YouTube video was about my state of the collection to end the year in 2025, and I figured it would be a good topic to talk about today, because as I was making the videos, I kind of realized I was giving the story a little bit to how I got to some of those pieces, but there was a lot that I wasn't able to fit in there because, again, of the shorter video format. So I figured today we could walk through a little bit of how I got to this place with my collection, and how some of the design elements have remained the same across, how some of my decision making has remained the same across, and just how I think about the collection overall and watch collecting in general. So again, thanks for sticking with me. Please do like the podcast, subscribe. I don't know where I'll end up putting this yet, but please do subscribe if you enjoy this type of content, and let's dive into it. So the very first luxury piece that I acquired was the Rolex Sky Dweller. Now, you might say, wow, that's an incredible first piece, or, I mean, whatever your thought is on that, or, hey, Rolex sucks and I hate it, whatever your thought is. And the fact is that I had a Fossil watch early on, and that was kind of the first watch that I ever wore, as a kid, as a teenager, growing up a little bit. And that got me used to having a watch on my wrist. And I do think at some point, I don't know if I lost it or the battery died, or for some reason I just kind of stopped wearing it, got out of the watch interest a little bit. But I always liked accessorizing. I always liked accessories, necklaces, bracelets, those sorts of things. Always just appealed to me. I don't know why. It was always just part of, I think, self-expression, if you want to call it that, which I do think is a big component of why we like watches, as it's another way to express ourselves on the wrist in the form of art, really, because no one needs a watch. We've got our phones that we can use just fine. So I do think there's a component to that. But so I had this Fossil watch, and from there, probably in my late teens, early 20s, I started to look a little bit more, found Movado as a brand, really liked Movado. There were the Luno Sport models were the ones that I liked. It always bothered me a little bit with Movado that they had just the little silver dot at 12, but you couldn't actually read the time very well, and that that always kind of bugged me a little bit, because I'm like, if I'm gonna wear a watch, I actually do want it to be functional. I want to be able to tell the time. That's important. And so the models that I went after, or was more attracted to, were, again, they were the Luno Sport was the model line. You can probably still find them. I think they still have made different versions of them now, but basically it was kind of similar. It had that very refined, very streamlined design element, but it had a track around the outside of the dial where you could actually tell the time. So I was like, this is great. I still get the little signature dot at 12, but you get this, refined kind of minute track, and they were bracelet watches. So I had, I think, one that was two-tone. I had one that was silver, and then one that was black PVD. Because that's been another theme across the years, is if I like something, I very often will just get the same thing in different different examples of it. Even the guitar that I have right behind me here is a Dean Carl Sanders signature black V, and I do have a custom spalted maple of the exact same guitar in a different color scheme, because again, I just love the look and the design of the guitar. And I do think that that's translated over into watches for me. So I had 3 of these watches, and then when I was probably in my mid-20s, I think, I was like, I want to like do something different. I like the 3 that I have, but I'm kind of like, maybe I consolidate, and step it up and get like a little bit of a nicer Movado, just as like, this is the next step in collecting. So I found this black alligator strap. Oh gosh, I think the line was not Museum, Black Label, I think is what it was. And I always thought it was interesting looking back, because it had a circular date disc on it, and then I think it had a small seconds as well. So it only had the signature dot at the top, circular date disc ring that you could see, and then it just had an outline around the actual date, and then it had a small seconds sub-register on it. And so I think about those now, because in looking at my existing collection, that element still exists quite a bit in some of the pieces that I own. So I just thought that was really interesting as I then looked forward. And I still remember seeing the rose gold Rolex Daytona with chocolate dial at the time, and this is the old version, the Arabic numerals version. And I just loved how the chapter rings on the chronograph sub-registers were rose gold. And so you had this nice chocolate dark dial contrast, or dark dial, and then you had this contrast of these shiny little sub-registers, and I just liked the overall design of it. That was actually the very first watch that I remember seeing that I found attractive from Rolex, because people talked about Rolex. I mean, I wasn't really into the luxury watch space at that point, but it did interest me enough where I was starting to look around a little bit, find some different things, and that was the first watch that I saw that I was like, wow, that's a really beautiful looking watch. I had no idea the price point. I had no idea that they were hard to get, and this was pre the insanity of COVID, but it interested me. So that was a big influence. And then the other one experience that I had was being on a trip in, oh gosh, this is probably close to 10 years ago now. And I remember going into a jewelry store, like a watch jeweler, because I did, again, was into watches and those sorts of things. I remember going in and seeing this brand that was a little bit dressier, but the design was super sleek and modern, and all the lines on the dial were just very pointed and precise, and there was an element of like refined precision. And the brand was Jaeger-LeCoultre. And I remember seeing that, and I knew nothing, again, about the luxury watch space or any of these other brands, but I was intrigued enough that I think I got a catalog from them. And I remember just looking through it, and I was miles away from being able to afford anything like that at the time. But I remembered it, and I kept it in my brain. And every year I would do like a prosperity map or a vision board. And then, of course, reverse engineer the work to get to those things, and I still do that today. And so I think those experiences early on really helped fuel my interest in watches. And I remember, being very big on dream building, right? So I remember going to a mall where they had pre-owned Rolex once, and I tried on that rose gold Daytona with the Arabic numerals, and I took a picture of it on my wrist, and then I used that on my vision boards, several years running. And then, when it came to the time where I was actually financially in a spot where I could put a good amount of money towards a luxury watch, it was a little out of my price range to spend that much, because again, they were starting to appreciate at that point. So you're talking over $30,000 for a rose gold Daytona. As a first watch was pretty up there. And so that's when I started to explore a bit more, and found the Rolex Sky Dweller. And I loved every version of it that I saw. I mean, they have on the Rolex website and things, they had a black dial variant in steel. They had the blue dial variant in steel. And it's all these cool like airplane shots and things like that. Because of course it's a travel watch. And I was like, I don't really travel, but the thing that I appreciated about it was the complexity and the refined design and the not necessarily intuitive, but the innovative way that they allowed the movement to be controlled by the bezel was super, super interesting to me. And so I remember seeing videos of how to set the watch, and I was just like, this is the coolest thing ever. You turn the bezel, and it accesses the different functions of the movement, and then you use the crown to adjust the reference time or the hours or the date. And I just thought it was really amazing. And so there's definitely been an element of technology and like refinement that's gone into the collection. And I think those have, again, carried into the existing collection. So that was a big part of kind of how I got started in the luxury watch space. And again, from the time that I started to look and see some of those pieces to the time that I actually bought them probably was about 5, 6, 7 years. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, gosh, I can't afford these things, whatever it is, just remember that. I mean, there's a time period there, and it does take some planning and some work and some effort, and you just have to be okay with that. That's just part of the journey, part of the process, and I think that's important to remember. So let's talk through how that actually came to fruition then. And by the way, I've got a couple of dogs in the room or wandering around next to me, so if you hear some click-clacking or anything, it's Duke and Thor. They're just having a good time over here. So let's see, getting closer into that time frame of acquiring my first watch. I remember I was a big Kevin O'Leary fan, and I really appreciated his books on leadership and finance and just success in business and those sorts of things. And so I remember starting to see some of his content where he was advocating a brand called Rubber Bee for some of the straps that he made. For him, it was red, of course. But I remember going on Rubber Bee's website, and I remember finding the strap variant that they had for the Sky Dweller in navy blue to match the blue dial. And I remember seeing that specific picture. It's a picture of the watch on its side with the navy strap on it. And I remember seeing it, and I thought to myself, that is the piece that I want, because you get this really amazing contrast of like the dark navy, and it's very subtle, right? That color, it's not black, it's color, but it's a very subtle color. And then you have that contrasted with the bright steel and of course like the Rolex or white gold bezel. And that was the spec that I actually wanted. I actually had the strap for that watch before I had the watch. So to give you an idea of how perfect that I thought that was. And so I do remember it was April of 2020 was when I actually finally bought the piece, and I was super naive about the whole thing at that point. I remember calling a local authorized dealer and asking him and saying, hey, I'm interested in this blue dial Sky Dweller. Do you have any in stock? Again, I had no idea how this all worked at that point. I was like, thought it was like anything else. You go in, you ask for what you want, you buy it, and then you leave. And his response was something along the lines of, well, hey, we haven't seen that watch in 9 months, 10 months. Usually when that happens, it means that they're getting ready to discontinue that model. And so I was thinking to myself, well, there's no point in trying to get it from a dealer then if it's going to be discontinued, so I'll just find a pre-owned version of it. And I already had a long watching history with Watchbox at that point. Tim Masso, thanks Tim, if anyone out there knows Tim Masso, great guy, and I do think he's probably one of the most knowledgeable people in the industry about watches. And so I remember they had a Sky Dweller listed, blue dial, and there was a price on it, and I thought maybe I can negotiate the price. Again, being totally ignorant to this whole thing. And so I remember getting a message back and talking to one of the guys, Armand, If you don't know Armand at 1916, he is fantastic. Would highly recommend. I've worked with him on several pieces now, so Armand, appreciate you. And we were messaging back and forth, and it was kind of like, hey, these we don't really negotiate on. Rolex prices are pretty firm in order to have them sell at like a market value and all those sorts of things. And so I was like, you know what, whatever. It was, in that instance, it was going to be my 30th birthday that year. And so I decided, you know what, this is the timing feels right to me, and I've got most of the money put aside for it. Like, let's do it. And so I got that watch in April of 2020, and I was just over the moon. I knew enough about changing the bracelet and putting a strap on it. So I literally, I think I had it on bracelet for a whole hour that day, and I remember changing out the bracelet, putting the rubber bee strap on it, and I still have this tradition today of when I have something on my vision board or prosperity map, I will when I actually achieve the thing or acquire it or whatever it is, I'll take a video of putting the item, like the real item, next to the picture of the item on the vision board. And so that's what I did, and I still remember that being such a just instrumental moment in not only me getting a watch, because again, like getting the watch was part of it, but it was more so just seeing the ability of I put this goal, I put this big milestone up here, and then I reverse engineered the work that I needed to do to actually get it, and I did it. And that was a huge moment for me personally. Again, that was 2020. So here we are in the end of 2025, and we're at 6 pieces now. But that's been a journey, back and forth. So when I acquired that first watch in 2020, I wore that thing every day, every day, every day. There was never a day that I didn't wear it. For about 2 years. It was a little over roughly 2 years, I think. And then a couple years later, I had gotten a promotion, and it came with a big bump in pay. And I really didn't. I mean, I was looking at other watches, of course, but I didn't really think like, oh, I need another watch. I was really happy with my Sky Dweller because it was so versatile. You had water resistance, you had travel ability, you had again that subtlety that I like in my watches. It wasn't super flashy, right? And I remember then thinking, okay, well, like if I would get something else, what else would I want? And at that point, again, I was still really into Rolex. Like I was going through the catalog, but I didn't really like a lot of the mainstream pieces. And that's been something that's kind of a personal characteristic of mine, I guess. I've always been a little bit countercultural and a little bit I want to go against the current, or just not just for the sake of it, but it's just I don't want to look and sound and be like everybody else, right? Like I want to have my own path. I want to find my own stuff. I want to have my own style, define all those things for myself, and that's what led me to the Yachtmaster 2, because it was that same kind of thing. Everyone was like, it's ugly, it's the Clown Master, right? There are all these kind of nicknames for it. But I loved the concept, right? It's, okay, number one, you get the ring command bezel again, just like the Sky Dweller, so I felt like there was a little bit of kinship there. And then there was also the element of the 10-minute regatta timer, countdown timer, which I thought was really functional for a lot of different things. And man, I remember, so I ended up getting that piece, and I just loved it. Like I loved having that functionality. It's a flyback chronograph as well. If you've never looked at the Yachtmaster 2, they discontinued them now, but they're still actually really good by pre-owned, and the functionality is probably one of the more helpful out there in the watch space. So I remember getting the Yachtmaster 2, same exact thing. I went straight to rubber bee, found a white strap with a blue stripe down the side, and it matched the dial perfectly. So there was this element of like, I want to match the strap that I have on the watch to the color of the dial. So that was definitely a big element too. So I remember doing that. And then, man, I mean, I was kind of just a little bit on a high at that point, I think. It was like I financially was doing really well, and I just wanted to keep going, right? And I liked Omega. I had always liked a lot of the design elements of Omega. And so I remember finding a white dial Aquaterra. It was a 38 millimeter on the gray rubber strap, And probably, I think, within the same month that I got the Yachtmaster 2, I also got the Aquaterra. So again, we went from Sky Dweller in 2020 to 2022, not really even considering getting another watch. And then 2022, the Yachtmaster 2 did that, and then got the Aquaterra within a month later. And I really kind of set myself up to not like that watch, even though visually I liked it, because the Sky Dweller's a 42 and the Yachtmaster 2 is a 44. And so, and I have small wrists. You've seen this on my content if you can, if you've looked at it, but I do have about 6-inch circumference wrists, which is pretty small. There's a lot of people that would say, hey, you shouldn't be wearing a Sky Dweller even because it's oversized. And so I got really focused on the lug to lug dimension, because people didn't really talk about that, but Tim always did. And so I always thought about like, okay, what's the lug to lug dimension on the watch? Because that actually has a lot to do with the fit, more so even maybe than the actual case size in some cases. So, and they were exactly the same between the Yachtmaster 2 and the Sky Dweller. And so that's the reason why I was like, okay, even though the Yachtmaster 2 is a 44, I know I can still fit it because the Sky Dweller is a 42 and I like the 42. But the Aquaterra was so small. I mean, the lug to lug I think was like 44, and it's a 38 millimeter case, and so it just felt like toyish to me at that point. And so I ended up trading it back in and selling it back. And again, they were great with the return policy, so they were willing to take it back, which was amazing. And then I think I really kind of started trying to figure out what came next. And I had read, seen, a lot about Grand Seiko, and really liked the dials and the designs. I liked the nature-inspired aspects of it, but I had never seen them in person. And I remember I was on a trip at the end of 2022, and I was in Miami. And I remember going there's a shopping center there. I think it's the Design District. That's what it is. And there was a Grand Seiko boutique there. And I remember going in and seeing them in person for the first time, and I was just so blown away by the polishing and the way that of course they have the lighting set up in the boutique because it really just accentuates all of that. And I was blown away. And I remember I was the only one in there, and so the sales guy was really, really nice, very down to earth, very friendly, and he was just showing me around because I was like, I don't know much about Grand Seiko other than seeing pictures and videos, but like I've never seen them in person. I don't know the different model lines. And so he was kind of showing me around, and I remember we got to the very last piece, and he was like, this is, oh yeah, and then this is the last one I'll show you. Okay, this is I can't even remember. I think it had won some award that year, but it was Evolution 9. It was the SLGH, I think, 007. I can't remember the exact model, but it was the Night Birch with that dark brown, birch tree dial. And I was like, this is just the coolest looking thing. In the light, it almost looked like there were little gold flakes in it. I mean, it was beautiful. And that was the first time that I had actually kind of made, not exactly an impulse purchase, because, again, I had been looking at them over the course of time, but it was the first time that I decided to just do it right then and there on the spot. And so I got the Grand Seiko when I was in Miami, came home, added it to my collection. Once again, went online, got a rubber bee strap that was brown and black and complemented the dial really well. And that was my three-piece collection that I was kind of rolling with for a while. And then I remember, I had been looking at JLC in the background here. Again, I remembered the Jaeger-LeCoultre catalog that I had. I remember seeing it early on. And so I had been looking around at different things, and I found the Master Ultra Thin collection. And I really, really loved that design. I still love that design. I think it's one of the most beautiful watches ever made, which is a pretty bold statement, but I do think it's true. And so I found the black dial variant of it, the new one. I wanted the new one because it had a little bit of different, the indices were a little bit longer. They looked a little bit more precise than the prior generation. So I remember finding one, picking that up. And I was really getting deep into JLC because I just had, I don't know if it was seeing all the different things about their heritage and their history, along with their design language and just some of the components and things they had. Everything from basic watches all the way up to their Hybris Mechanica stuff was just incredible. And so I remember getting that watch, and I loved that watch. I really, really loved that. Like, I started wearing it more than almost anything else in my collection at that time. I posted a video that still is like one of my best performing videos of all time, weirdly, multiple years later. But that was a fantastic watch. I would highly recommend, if you are into dressier watches at all, Jaeger-LeCoultre Master Ultra Thin Moon. There's a black dial, there's a silver, there's a blue. There's now a copper, like hammered dial, which is stunning. Really loved that watch. And of course, as I was going down the rabbit hole, I remember I found in 2019, there was this video from SIHH that year where they released a trio of Master Ultra Thin watches, and they were enamel dial watches, and this blue translucent enamel, which is just absolutely beautiful. And they had a Master Ultra Thin Moon version, and I saw that watch and I was like, okay, this is like where I need to go with this. I don't know how I'll get one or where I'll find it, but I need to move in this direction, because that is probably the most beautiful watch I've ever seen. I just loved the dial, loved the color, loved everything about it, and it's white gold, instead of steel, which is a change for me. Up to that point, I had only had steel watches. And so I remember finding a couple of videos. There's still a video that's out there, and it's a Watch Advisor video where the guy from Watch Advisor, I think it's Alex, I don't remember. I can't remember his name at the moment, but I've watched that video so many times and I can't remember his name. But sorry, Watch Advisor. But he was talking with Stefan Belmont from JLC, and he was talking about the guilloche work and the enamel and just all the different elements of the design. And I was like set. I was like, this is the next thing. So I remember probably about a year went by, I think. And, I reached back out to my contact at Watchbox at the time and said, hey, like, if you ever get one of these, call me. Like, I absolutely need to have this piece. And I remember it was almost a year later, and I was kind of getting a little hopeless at that point. I mean, it had been 6-7 months since I, like, expressed interest in it. And, I was looking around online, things like that, and I just couldn't find one. Like, they were just non-existent. So I was kind of getting into a place in my head where I was almost ready to accept defeat, in the sense that I didn't think I would ever find one of them. And I reached out actually to my contact at 1916 and said, hey, I've been thinking about this. Like, I'm kind of accepting the fact that I probably won't ever see one of these watches. So, you know what? I think I like the Rolex Cellini in blue dial. It also had that kind of radial guilloche. Obviously, it was machine done, not hand done, but I was like, this might be the closest thing I can get to it. And these aren't really, going anywhere. I think they had just discontinued them at that point also. And so I was like, I just want to do one of these. Let's do this watch. And he said, well, you know what? It's funny that you called, because I actually happen to have one of those JLCs that you were talking about. And I was like, get out of here, no way. And he had the perpetual calendar version of the same watch. And honestly, I was a little disappointed at first, because I was really set on, I love the simplicity of the Master Ultra Thin Moon. But at the same time, the perpetual calendar version was so much more complicated. 2 styles of guilloche, it takes 2 to 3 days just to make a dial on that watch. And so I was like, I got to do it. I have to do it. It may be the only one that I'll ever find and have the chance to do. And so at that point, that was a big jump for me. That was a white gold piece, perpetual calendar, custom. 1 of 100, limited edition. And so I had to trade in. I had to chop the collection. It was like, I got to do it. This is an opportunity for me. And so I traded. Oh, and I had also gotten another Omega at that point. I had gotten a blue Aquaterra. I think it was the Day-Date version, possibly. Yeah, because I was looking for something that was a little bit different than what I had. So I had, annual calendar with the Sky Dweller, chronograph or a countdown timer with the Yachtmaster 2. I had the, nature-inspired, just plain date dial with the Grand Seiko. And then I had the moon phase with the JLC Master Ultra Thin Moon. And so, yeah, I had gotten the Omega Day-Date because I was like, this is a different complication than anything else in my collection. And so then it was like, all right, collection's got to change, because I didn't have the money to spend to go up to that. So I ended up selling four. I think it was four, right? Omega JLC, Grand Seiko, yep, and the Yachtmaster 2. So I sold and traded those four and ended up paying a little bit. So it gives you some idea of to get the JLC perpetual calendar. So then I found myself back at two. Rolex Sky Dweller with blue dial, JLC, Master Ultra Thin perpetual enamel with just those two watches. And that was my collection. And I said, okay, one, this JLC is like the best thing ever, so I'm really glad I did this. And I still hesitated on it a little bit. I still was kind of like, okay, this is pretty amazing, but if I ever find the Ultra Thin Moon version, I might trade it. I don't know. So, I mean, that is a TBD on that, which I'm sure some people would probably think, hey, look, dude, you're crazy for ever trading in a perpetual calendar for a moon phase. It was, the moon phase was the original one that I fell in love with, though, so that's where it's kind of like, I don't know, maybe, we'll see. But I do love that watch. And so then I had those two. Then the watch group that I was a part of, Tim's watch group, they did a collaboration with Dan Reuter of Reuter Watches, based out of New York. And Dan had a really interesting story, basically hand finishes, his cases, his movements, all those things, even though it's a ETA 7750 that he uses in the watch. But they were beautiful. And so he actually designed a watch for Tim with this really bright lacquered blue dial, royal blue dial, which is beautiful. And Tim loves racing green. He's just a huge fan of that, so his was like blue with racing green. The group watch that they did gave some options. And so you could do red accents, yellow accents, racing green accents, or white. And so, of course, as I started to think about it and see the way my collection was evolving here, I was like, well, the white keeps me neutral and in the blue camp, if you will. And so that's what I decided to do. And I also went through cancer at that point. That was a really weird time for me. It was like kind of the end of 22 to mid 23. I was going through cancer and chemo and just a whole bunch of stuff. Definitely not a fun time. Don't recommend it. Kind of came out of nowhere, but I was like, all right, we just got to do this. We got to get through it. And, I had a ton of medical expenses at that point. And so I ended up having to put that on hold, the Reuter piece, until I kind of got through that. Had it still financially a good year, and, came out of that and said, hey, Dan, like, I'm ready now. Like, can I still get one of these? And he was like, absolutely, have it for you in a month or whatever it was. And so that was the third blue piece. That's kind of how the blue continued on. And again, there were some of those early design elements that still remained. Like the Sky Dweller, I think about it all the time, has the reference time ring in the center, was so similar. I still think it's one of the reasons why I was attracted towards that watch, is it still had that ring in the center, just like that black dial, Black Label Movado did. And I noticed that, was similar. Same thing with the JLC perpetual calendar, right? Now, in this case, it's got 4 of the sub-registers because it has the date, the month, the day, and then a moon phase. But still that element of, there's those circular elements on the dial itself. And I just really, really think that that's something that I'm visually attracted to. There's a sense of harmony, and symmetry in all the dials and all the watches that I have. So we were at 3. I think I was kind of trying to figure out where I wanted to go next. And I knew I wanted an Omega back in the collection. I got an Aquaterra again. And this time I think I did the 41 millimeter blue latest model Aquaterra. And it didn't quite, what I found was it was too similar to the Sky Dweller. And so I do think that that's an important principle of when you are thinking about the use case of your watches. Do you have watches that overlap too much to the point where one is going to monopolize all the wrist time? Because I very much felt that for a while, where it was like, I have this Aquaterra, I'm kind of using it as a go anywhere, do anything watch, but it's monopolizing the wrist time over the Sky Dweller, and I love the Sky Dweller. So it just didn't balance right for me. Same thing with the JLC. There was a second where I was trying to again get an Omega in the collection, and I found a Omega Seamaster London Boutique Edition. They did these limited boutique edition watches, and there were 4 of them. And the London one had a kind of like a fume blue fade dial, and it was a little bit more on the dressy side. And when I got that watch, I realized I did the same thing where it was just like, I'm wearing this one instead of the JLC. Why am I not wearing the JLC? I love that JLC. And so over time, these are kind of some of the nuances and things that you learn as you have different pieces in your collection and figure out what works and what doesn't. And so I remember I ended up having an Aquaterra, and I also found a Crador quartz model because I did want a Grand Seiko back in the collection. Like, I really appreciated it as a brand, and so I had to figure out what I wanted there. So I got a Crador. It was pretty inexpensive. I think it was like $1,200. I found it pre-owned, and it was really beautiful, but it didn't quite scratch the same itch as Grand Seiko did for me, and so I ended up selling that one too because I was like, this just isn't the right one. So then we had the Grand Seiko limited edition. It's an SLGA 017, the AJHH model. And it was the Skyflake dial, Evolution 9 case design with the thicker hour markers because I do really like that. Some of the Heritage Grand Seikos, they have the thinner hour markers. It's not that they don't look good. I just like the chunkier ones because I think, again, it kind of plays to that more element of like refined precision. And I also really liked the light play that you get off those bigger hour markers. Even in dark lighting settings, you still get a ton of refraction. I mean, I'm wearing it right now, and whereas I was kind of like just exploring blue, this was my way of going for something lighter, still keeping it in the blue family, but that's when I started to say, okay, I need to have like different variants of blue because I don't want to have all the same watch. I don't even want to have all the same dial because that's boring. Nobody wants that. But I do want to have something that's interesting, something that gives me a little versatility within the collection, still keeping it in that framework of, okay, blue dial, modern design, very sleek elements, that are there. And then, of course, spring drive because it's Grand Seiko's kind of, one of their biggest achievements in terms of mechanical design, mechanical engineering. And so that was the next piece that I found. So then I was at 4. And I was like, all right, let's keep going. I was really getting into the rotation of things. Like, I started to find myself wearing certain watches at certain times of day, certain occasions, things like that. My Grand Seiko was actually kind of my formal watch for a while because, again, it just has a lighter dial, and the reflectiveness of the hour markers just made it look dressy. And so that was my formal watch for a little while. And then I started to, again, I was exploring different blue dials, trying to figure out what else I may be interested in. And I ran across Girard-Perregaux. And GP, I had looked at Laureatos, I'd seen them in person. And that's really all I knew of GP was the Laureato. And they're beautiful watches, don't get me wrong. But I didn't realize that they had like a dress line. And so I started looking through their website at one point, and I found the 1966 collection. And I realized that they had an aventurine dial version of this, and I love aventurine. I think it's one of the coolest looking dials ever. And a couple years back, when I was in California, I had been to it was actually a 1916 boutique, and they had a little Langa with the aventurine dial. And I remember looking at that out on the patio in the sunlight and just being blown away by just how reflective it was and how vibrant and fiery that dial was. And so I kind of put that in the back of my brain. I hadn't really thought about it. It wasn't an active search because it wasn't quite blue in the sense that I was used to looking for blue dials. But I found the 1966 Orion, and I started looking around, and it's just one of those watches that, like, nobody really wants. nobody really wants because it's kind of in the shadow of the Laureato. Um, and so I remember finding one. I found a really great deal on one, put in an offer, and the offer got accepted. And I was just jazzed about it because I was like, this is freaking great. I mean, it's probably a $10,000 watch, 11 somewhere in there, I think is the retail on it. And I got it for significantly less than that. Very, very great deal. So that was exciting, and that brought a new element into the collection because again, my Grand Seiko is kind of my formal dress piece, but now I had a dark dial again, like the Master Ultra Thin Moon, the black dial one that I had prior, that still is keeping me in the still keeping my feet in the blue realm or territory, but it's a darker dial and it has the contrast, and I really really love everything about that watch. It fits me very well because it's very narrow, even though it's a 41 millimeter case. Um, the lug width, or the lug to lug, is about 45 millimeters, I think, and so it wears very well, even on smaller wrists, which I continue to kind of struggle with and try to find things for. So that was the Grand Seiko was 2025, the GP was 2025, and then just recently was the Omega Seamaster Ploprof 1200 meter. I really like Omega. Like, I've loved it ever since I got into watch collecting, and the value that you can get in an Omega. I'll continue to say I do think Grand Seiko and Omega are the two best value watches in the industry. Period, hands down. And of course, you can get a Seiko or a G-Shock or all these other things. I'm not disagreeing with that, but I just think if you're talking about like true mechanical, like high horology type of watchmaking, Grand Seiko and Omega are going to be your best values. I mean, you can get into a pre-owned Grand Seiko, sometimes even Spring Drive, for like $3,000 to $5,000 pre-owned. That's insane for the quality that you get. Same thing with Omega. You can get into a 38 mil Aquaterra or a 41 mil Aquaterra or a Seamaster Professional 300, and you can do it for, again, that same sort of price point, $3, 4, $5,000, like, for something that will last you generations and that's super accurate. Being able to pay that little for it and still get a really quality watch is incredible. So I had almost every version of the Aquaterra, just about. I had the 38. I had a 42 day date. I feel like there was a different one that I had there for a second, but it's kind of eluding me. I don't know. So, yeah, but I still liked the design of the Aquaterra, and I was like, well, what do I do? Do I get another version of the same thing, or go with a different size, or like what do I do here? And so then I saw it was actually a Tim review. It's a Tim Massa review of the Omega Seamaster Ploprof 1200 meter in summer blue. And the biggest thing that kind of struck me in his review was talking about the case dimensions, because the prior versions of the Ploprof were a bit larger. Again, it's got this odd case shape. It's got this 9:3 dimension that's like 55 millimeters, and that's been consistent across several model lines. But then there's the lug to lug, or like the height of the case, or not the height, I should say, not the thickness, but the tallness, the vertical dimension of the case. And it was like 48 millimeters, which, again, I mean, I have a Sky Dweller that's like 50, so I'm not like super worried about that. But I was like, okay, this thing is thicker, it's chunkier. If I'm gonna own this, I want it to be a size that's gonna make sense for me. I love the fact that they had a titanium version, but again, even that didn't quite fit. And so when I was thinking about it and sizing it out, I was like, hey, it's a 45 millimeter lug to lug. Like, this would really fit me. Yeah, it's wide, it's heavy, but I'm used to having, kind of bigger, heavier watches. Again, the Sky Dweller is like 14 thick. It's like 50 millimeters lug to lug, 42 millimeter case. And so I took a trip over the summer and through Ohio, and I stopped at the Teddy Baldassar boutique. Would highly recommend. It's up near Cleveland if you're anywhere near Ohio, and they had a really great selection there. And they actually had one of the Ploprofs there, the summer blue Ploprofs. And so I tried it on, and it actually fit me pretty well. And so that was kind of the check in the box in my brain of like, okay, this could work. This could work. And so then, of course, I started my search, to find something, and was on a vacation at the end of the year, and was just kind of like, you know what, it's just time. Like, it's time to do it. And so that was my latest acquisition to the collection, was the Seamaster 1200 meter Ploprof Summer Blue. And I really do like it. I'm still trying to figure out the fit of it, because the factory strap, and I also got a shark mesh bracelet with it, didn't quite sit on me the way that I want them to. So I'm still experimenting a little bit with straps on it. I do find the timing bezel actually to be the most useful feature. So again, if you hold the plunger down on the right side, and then you can turn the bezel bidirectionally. So you line it up with the hour hand or with the minute hand, and then you can keep track of elapsed time. That's actually been really, really helpful. So I've been enjoying that. But that is how I got to these 6 pieces. And so going back a little bit, I do think, again, that those Movados that I had in the early days with that date ring translated directly into the Sky Dweller, which was the first piece. Translated pretty directly, or the Rose Gold Daytona at least, kind of translated really directly into the JLC Perpetual Master Ultra Thin Enamel. And there are elements of that still continue to translate into the collection, because I do think there's a couple of things for me. Obviously, the blue dial theme has evolved out of this, and that continues to be my focus. It's okay, how do I now expand the blue dial theme of it, but make it interesting, right? Because no one wants 17 of the same blue dial. I couldn't even fathom at this point having 17 watches. I can maybe at this point stretch to like maybe an additional 1 or 2, but that's about it. And so I do think thinking about what you want in your collection as far as use case, when are you going to wear all these things? Are they just expensive pieces of mechanical engineering just sitting on a desk? Because if they are, you got to ask yourself what you're doing with that. So I think that's one key. Again, harmony on the dial, a big piece of the whole collection. Aside from like Rolex having the Cyclops, the GP having a date, the Grand Seiko having the date, the Reuter is a little bit different because the chrono is, the ETA movement is kind of has the sub-registers off to one side, but still, there's an element of harmony there. So I think thinking about what those design elements are that you are most attracted to, and then going in on those, don't just like brush past it. Take some time to think about what it is that lives in your collection, and what gets the wrist time, and when do you wear them, and when don't you wear them. And I think all of those components factor into not just building a collection, but also kind of creating a lifestyle. And I don't mean lifestyle in the Instagram sense, but I just mean it. How do you incorporate watches into your lifestyle in a way that is meaningful for you? And I do think that's really important. So those are a couple of the themes. It's a little bit about the journey of how I got to where I have been with watch collecting. Again, it's been a journey probably of 10 years plus, realistically, if you kind of incorporate the Movados, even longer than that. So I think it's going to be different for everybody, but you do have to think about some of those things. I think what you'll do if you do the time to do those reflections is you will save yourself money. You'll probably save yourself some time. You'll probably enjoy your collection more. And I do think, it's one of the reasons why I have a bunch of watch basics content on my YouTube, because you do have to learn about the watches. If you're just going after, again, what you're seeing posted or what's trending in articles and things like that, I'm not going to say it's wrong, because everyone's looking to get something different out of watches, but I do think that spending the time to reflect and build your own thought process and method for how you collect will help you be more satisfied with your watch collection over time. So, with that, I want to say thanks again for tuning in. I appreciate you coming along the journey with me as I kind of reminisce here a little bit. And again, my goal for you is that you do get out of watches whatever it is that you want to get out of watches, because I want you to know and love the watches you have so that you can be a satisfied watch collector. So thank you so much for tuning in. Take care, and I will talk to you next time. Bye-bye.